wish that I could.
Okay, so let's probably get into a little bit of how you composed the music of the song for the different instruments. So we have a guitar, we have a piano, and we have a cello. Um, so we'll understand that one by one. Uh, but generally, I think you've talked about the guitar in terms of how you came up with the chord progression and so on. Maybe if you could tell us a little bit about how you did the piano accompaniment, which you see from the second verse onwards, right? Um, so, how did you think about that? One of the things that I noticed was it's a bit darker in terms of the sound as compared to the guitar. So, was that intentional? What was your thought process behind that?
Yeah, so in general, it was a case. So I had recorded the whole pass of guitar and whole pass of voice by then. The song was like kind of recorded, the basic tracks. And I felt like it got a little monotonous because there was just guitar and voice. Though obviously the lyrics are pretty captivating in my opinion. But so I thought, okay, I actually like a lot of music where there's a guitar strumming and then there's just a piano just playing soft stuff at the back behind the guitar, just for textural stuff. So I decided to try a piano. Now there was no rehearsal of this. I think what happened is I'm just like, okay, pull up a piano track, let's record, figure it out as we go. That's why it's a little clunky, the recording. And also there was no specific intention on the tone of the piano. I obviously played around a little bit with what settings I had and figured out something that I like to listen to, but there wasn't too much intention or too much attention to detail paid, because as I said, this was effectively what I would call a demo. In a demo session, I'm just trying to put my ideas out there. It doesn't matter if it sounds good or doesn't sound good. I'm just trying all my ideas. I don't want to stop that cycle in my head of, okay, this is what I'm thinking, let's try it. Okay, this is what I'm thinking, let's try it. I don't want to stop and analyze and be like, oh, is this good, is this bad? No, that's
Yeah.
for later. So basically that's how the piano came about. And so the idea was during the verses just to play the chord at the first beat, on the first beat, play the chord and support the guitar with that texture. And as I played along with the song, generally as the song grows, you have to grow the piano part as well. So I think during the middle section, which is the contrast section, I play a little bit of some stabs also. And then there are a few fills. The fills are basically just arpeggios. So arpeggios are where you take a chord and instead of playing all the notes simultaneously, you just play them one after the other. So basically that's what I've done. So I played the chord and then arpeggiated it to create like a slight fill in the more intense or the higher melody parts of the song. So that's what the piano part basically. That's how I came up with the piano part.
Okay. So, we've discussed that. I know in your process that a lot of it was feel based on the knowledge that you've built up over time using the guitar. But for someone who's like kind of new to this, right? If you had to kind of look back at the song and analyze it a little bit and say, maybe from a music theory point of view, or just like a general observation point of view, why certain things sound good and why certain choices make sense, right, in hindsight, which is probably what your subconscious was saying and doing. But if you could demystify that a little bit, maybe even play a couple of the chords or the notes on the guitar, that would be cool.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, so if I were to like analyze it, the song is in the key of E flat, but with the guitar we have this thing called a capo that we can just use and then use the same shape. Shape meaning how I place my fingers.
So
Uh,
can you tell us what is E flat a little bit?
so E flat is a note. I mean, uh, this is an E flat note.
So it
It's
comes like it's between a E and an F, right?
yeah, it's between a D and an E basically. So
Huh.
E flat. It's between a D and an E, and so yeah. So basically, I'm playing an E flat major chord, but this is the same shape. If I were to play it here, I would play a C chord.
Hmm.
So, so I let's think of it as C because that makes life a little easier. So, if we are in the key of C, the notes that are part of the major scale is C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Right, that's the basic notes. And if you take these notes, you can form chords that are then part of the key of C. So, if I analyze the song, all the chords I've used come from this family of chords that are part of the key of C. So
So
in the
it's like your
verse,
subconscious knew the key, but like even though like you might not have explicitly thought of it that way, it turned out that way.
yeah, I mean, I think in general, I'm not. I haven't played enough songs where we deviate from the key very much, so my subconscious will generally stay in the key. If I deviate from the key, I think it has to be some intentional thought over there, like okay, I need to move, or I have to build up my subconscious's knowledge of outside the key chords kind of thing, which I'm actually working on right now. But yeah, so effectively, this song is pretty much in the key, and the verse basically stays very close to what we would call safe chords. So you have a one in generally in C, you'll have C major. That's your home chord. We consider it home. Then you have a G major, which also sounds very good with C major, and then you have F major. So these are the three major chords in the key of C. So in the verse, I'm basically using all of these three. The only minor chord I use is E minor, which, if you can tell, it sounds a little sad. But basically, with these four chords, the verse, you would say maybe because there's so many major chords, it should sound happy, but that's not how it works. I feel like depending on what melody you play over a major chord, you can kind of make it sound the way you want to make it sound.
So
So
is E minor in the key of C?
yes, E minor is in the
Is
key
also
of
in
C.
the key of C, right?
Correct. Yes. So all the chords that are played in the song are in the keys. And then for the middle section, which is different from the verse section, in that section, I think intentionally I'm like, okay, I've used these four chords in my verse, so I should start off with a chord that you haven't heard, so that the listener then okay realizes something different is going to happen here. So it starts with A minor, which is also part of the key of C, and then the rest of the chords F, G, and C are the same chords as in the verse, but they're in a different order. So it gives something different, and the melody is different over those chords.
Right. So maybe a couple of questions, right? So in one of the previous episodes, I was trying to uh, come up with an intuitive image of what a key is, right? And one image that I kind of thought of was like a color palette, right? So it's like a color palette with like an anchoring color, right? So let's say you have a palette in blue, right? And then you have blue adjacent colors and then other colors which go well with blue, right? That was one way to think about it. Does that make sense? Is there any other way which you think about it?
I don't know about an analogy, but I think of it as a journey, right? So you have in the key of C, C major chord is your home base. That's where you feel home. And in general, I think most people when they're listening to music, they find that one chord is like home base, and then the rest of the chords are other places. Now, some of these places are, I'd say, your relatives' places, your brother's place, your uncle's place, right? You're going a little further away. There's not too much risk, there's not too much deviation. And then some of the chords go pretty far. If you're in the key of C, you're limiting your boundary. Once you go out of the key of C, you're going beyond that boundary as well. That's how I think of it. It's like a journey. You're taking the listener on a journey with your chords and melody, effectively. So it depends on how far, how much tension you want to create, how much risk you want to take. And then once you've created the tension, how you bring yourself back home. Or do you even bring yourself back home? These are the kind of things based on the song. Now everything has to serve the song. So effectively, for me, it depends on what emotion I'm trying to portray, what is the message of the song that determines this journey. But effectively, chords, melody are all tools to take your
Yeah.
listener on the journey, basically.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Um, I think a lot of songs that we listen to, like pop or like acoustic guitar kind of songs, they kind of go through that thing of stating the situation, right? Then there's like a tension which is in the bridge, and then they come back and resolve, saying that even the lyrics, right?
Correct.
The lyrics also go that way, and therefore the chords also support that. And I think this whole pattern of statement, tension, resolution, right? That's like a common theme across most songs, right? And that's something which we probably feel, but we don't articulate, right? As saying that it's like that, and it's all about building the tension and then resolving it satisfactorily. Like and then you feel that satisfaction when you're as a listener, right? So
Correct.
that's what I've kind of felt from a lot of the songs. Of course, there are songs which don't go in this pattern, but a lot of songs that we hear in like day-to-day life have this kind of feel to it.
That's correct. Yeah, I think everything is about tension and resolution in when it comes to music. If you take any kind of music, it's all tension and resolution. Even if you go to blues, even though it's standard progression, 145, 145, but then at the end you have the turnaround, which basically is your journey back home.
Yeah. So could you show us like with a C, right? Like we've talked about keys and names of chords and all of that, but in terms of sound, right? If you take a C chord as your home base, right? What's one chord which would create tension, right? And then how do you resolve it back? Like, do you just come back from that chord, or you go through another step and then come back, right? Like a simple example like that would be nice.
Yeah, ideally, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I can do it on the spot, but I can show you what it sounds like to be within the key of C, and then when you go outside the key of C, does your ear perk up? You can test it for yourself. So we'll play four chords, kind of circular motion.
Hmm.
So we'll start with a C, then we'll go to an A minor, which is
Hmm.
still part of C. Then we go to a F, and then we go to a G, and then come back to C.
Hmm.
Right. So let's try that first. So that felt like we went on some kind of journey, not too far, everything sounded okay. And then we came back home. So now let's just change one note. So let's make A minor to A major. That's the only change we're going to make. A major is not part of the key of C. It's not a chord in the key of C. So, so your ears generally notice, okay, something is not right over here. This one chord, something went somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not wrong. It's you can still do it. You tie it in with a good melody. It sounds amazing. But that's basically what happens when you go outside the key versus inside the key. It's still a journey. Just the journey goes a little differently. And so yeah,
Yeah, and also like just to illustrate, right? Like when we say tension and resolution, right? Like even within the key, right? How does that sound? Like, what do you mean by resolution? Like it's a word, but like how does it like kind of sound?
correct, correct. So again, same thing. So say we're in the key of C. So I think E minor, even though it's in the key of C, it's like the most away from C, excluding some other chords. We won't get into the depths, but E minor sounds a little further away from home. So let's play C, then we'll play E minor, and then we'll play F, then G, and then back to C. So F, G, C is what basically is kind of resolving it. G is a chord that always, if followed by C, it feels good to the listener. So let's just see how that sounds, right? So you'll see that when I go from C to E minor, there's some tension is created.
Yeah, cool. I mean, I think this is very interesting, and I think one of the things that I really learned slowly over time is that um, when you have a key, you have a certain sequence of chords, right? Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? And in any key, a certain progression like 1, 4, 5, right? Or 1, 6, 5, 4, right? These will sound, these are common progressions which are used in a lot of songs, right? So you will immediately kind of identify them, whichever key it is in, right? So it has a certain pattern, right? So if you're writing a new song, and let's say you don't have that musical feel, right, like of what sounds well together, something to start with could just be like 145, right, of a particular key, and you can start to see how that sounds and then go from there. So there is a kind of structure and a kind of method behind it which you can use as a tool again, right? You can't be very theoretical about things, but you can use it as a tool to kind of say, okay, where do I start, and how do I kind of go about which song, which chords sound good together. There is some structure to that. It's not like all random, right? Which
Yes,
is what I
correct.
used to think that, oh,
Ah,
how do they think know which chords sound good together? That was always a question for me.
yeah, no, music theory is purely based on, yes, there are tools that you have to your you can use to figure out where to go from here, what options do you have, and things like that. There are a lot of tools. So as a starting musician, yes, you have to do that. I also did that all the time. Still, I mean, till today, I still do it. I still use chords in the key. 145, 1645 are like the four most common chords in this song. Basically has 1645. There's a 3 in the middle. That's all. Everything else is still the same. So yeah, I mean, uh, there's so many pop songs written with similar chord progressions like this. So there is definitely a tool. All I encourage people to do is when you're playing it, don't just play it for the sake of playing it. Listen to it and see how it makes you feel. And that's all.
Yeah.
That's what you have to feed your subconscious. Just how does it make you feel when you play these two chords together, then these two chords, and that's how you grow your palette of, okay, subconscious now decides, okay, I should go to this chord, I should go to this chord.
Yeah, and the reason why this particular progression that we spoke about sounds good is because so many of these songs have them, right? So we are kind of conditioned to think that, okay, this is nice, right? Uh, like that could be true for another progression as well. It's just that you need to try it and you need to internalize it, and then it might suit your song better, right? So the music that we are exposed to and what we try also determines what sounds good, right?
Correct. I
Like,
think everything is informed. Whatever music you listen to is what is informing your subconscious as to what is good, what should come next. This whole thing of resolution, maybe we are born with that. I'm not sure, it's some biological thing, but I think most people, if you play two chords, they have a feeling internally like, I want this note, I want this note. You feel that when it's so much tension is being built, and you're like, okay, I need to resolve, I need this note, and most people have that. I think it just comes from us listening to these songs multiple
and
times
it
over.
also comes from other forms of art, right? Like, so, like when you're writing a book, right, you always state the situation, then you build tension, there is some problem that happens, and then there is a resolution, right? In a movie, it's the same thing, right? You build tension, there's a fight, something happens, and then finally there's a resolution, generally good, right?
Yes, correct.
So in lot of things that we see, we have that tension resolution pattern, right? So, and as much as in music, so it's something that is very like kind of basic, fundamental to us, I think.
I think so. Yes, you are right.
Either it's like biological, which I don't know, but
Even
it's
I don't.
definitely partially because a lot of the things we see are like that. They go through that tension resolution cycle.
Correct. That's the journey we're used to.
Yeah.
You can even say maybe life, but yeah.
That is profound. Yeah. Okay, so I think what I wanted to kind of also touch upon is uh, how did you produce the song, right? And I think one part of it was also the cello, right? How did you introduce the cello? Um, what is the kind of what do you do in that workstation, right? Which kind of produces the song? Because I think one of the things which I've been discovering and talking about in the podcast in the previous songs is in the previous episodes is how difficult it is actually to produce a song with a very distinct sound, right? And there are so many different instruments involved, so much technique involved in mixing it, producing it. So how did you do it? Because you're a single like person, right? And you're playing all the instruments. So how did you do it? What was your process? And
Yeah, definitely being a one man band is not easy. I do look for collaborators every once in a while, but yeah, it's something I also wanted to learn. I have actually gotten more and more deep in production, and to be honest, it's much easier nowadays because everything is a lot of it is digital. Though still there's debate out there whether the digital sounds as good as the analog. Still, I think analog, the actual acoustic instruments, they sound way better than what we have the digital recreations of them. So, but yeah, for this song, it's four parts. We've already talked about it. It's guitar, voice, piano, and cello. So, I think the most difficult part of producing the song is to record an acoustic guitar. I find it very difficult, maybe because I'm an amateur, but so basically, I have to set up a mic. The position of the mic matters with regards to the sound hole. So generally, if you position it right in front of the sound hole, you'll get a very loud sound, but you'll get a lot of low frequencies, and that is not as clear. So generally, from what I've learned, and then once I've learned it, I've used it, and then you adjust based on what you hear. So you generally place a mic that's facing about the 12th fret of your guitar, and you get approximately a good tone about 6-7 inches away. You get a nice tone. It's not easy. I still not fully satisfied with acoustic guitar recordings for myself, but that's what I do. And then I for this song, it's not to a click track. So click track is something that keeps tempo while you're recording.
so like a
Uh,
metronome kind of thing.
Correct, it's a metronome. So I did not do that because I felt like this song has to flow. This
Hmm.
song cannot be robotic, or I while singing or while recording the song, I don't want to have to think about my timing.
Time.
I mean, obviously, I don't want to be sloppy with it. I don't want to be all over the place, but it has to flow. If I feel like the energy of the song is rising, it's okay if my rhythm goes slightly faster or slightly slow. And I think that's something we miss in modern recordings. In older recordings, they didn't have these click tracks, so they just played
Yeah.
as best they could. So yeah, so I recorded the guitar and the voice at the same time, because I think that's how it felt the most natural. Playing the guitar separately and voice separately would have been very weird for me,
Hmm.
especially for this song. I think it goes together. You have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm listening to the guitar and accordingly singing. That's how it goes. So that creates again some more complications. That basically, the mic that's capturing the voice will also capture some of the guitar, and the mic that's capturing the guitar will also capture some of the voice.
So you have
So
two
when it
mics.
yes, I have
Okay.
one mic for my voice and one mic for the guitar. You can do it with one mic also. It makes it even more complicated when it comes to mixing, because you have to make sure the volume of your voice and the guitar are balanced before recording. Right now, when I have two separate mics, I can adjust the volume of each a little bit and kind of get a balance. But if you have just one mic recording both sources, you need to firstly make sure the mic is positioned in such a way that the volume is already balanced while recording, which is a little tricky. But yeah, so one mic uh, recording the voice, one mic recording the guitar. Then the piano is directly played, and I mean it's probably the first take. It's very clunky. Probably if I ever release the song, it will be re-recorded and more attention to detail will be paid. Uh, and then the cello. So again, now second verse I introduced the piano, and so I thought, okay, for the third and fourth verse I should add something. And the third and fourth verse are very, I'd say, vulnerable verses in general. They're like pretty hard hitting lines. And I feel there are two instruments that are the saddest instruments in the world. If you play any note on it, anyone will feel sad. That is,
Hmm.
one is the cello and one is an Indian instrument called the sarangi.
Hmm.
These are the two instruments. If you play them, you'll feel sad immediately. So I thought, okay, well, what better thing to put than a cello? And the cello is playing a very simple part. So basically, the bass note of the chord, like if it's a C chord, it's playing a C. If it's a G chord, it's playing a G. If it's an F chord, it's playing an F. Only in the middle there's a note, there's a passing note. So when it going from G to a C, in the middle there's a different note that's played. It's a transition note. That's it. So that's the cello. Now the cello, I don't have a cello and I don't know any cello player, so I use something called MIDI. So the full form of MIDI is musical instrument digital interface. So basically, I can play a keyboard which sends a signal to a software. And the software then triggers a sample of a cello, and so that's how I can play the cello on the keyboard. Now it gives you some flexibility in terms of dynamics and expression, where you can kind of that move that parameter, and it changes the way it feels. Obviously, I cannot get an exact version of how a cello player would play, but based on how hard he bows it, or how fast and how much tremolo he's using, all these things can be adjusted in these things called MIDI instruments. And so that's how the cello is recorded for this demo, at least.
So it would be something like, you know, you play it on the keyboard, right? And that
Correct.
is essentially like transcribing the music, right, into whatever notes you're playing, right?
Correct.
And you could create like a sheet music out of that, maybe even, right?
Yes, correct.
And you take the same notes, and the software basically has, like, for every note it has a recording of an actual cello being played, right? So this is like a sampler, right?
Correct.
um, I was actually talking about the difference between a sampler and a synthesizer in the previous episode with
Uh,
on space oddity. So basically, a sampler being, the one where it's actually pre-recorded music, right, versus a synthesizer which is electronically generating that music, right? Um, so which basically means that all of these variations of playing the notes, all these different ways, they've all been recorded and they're part, and then they just match that and pick that and create the this thing, right? So okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mihir, and explaining a lot of what you explained through the song, right? And it's a beautiful song. I hope you all go and listen to it. I'll link all of Mihir's music, and this particular song probably not, but all of other Mihir's other music in the description, and so you can go check it out. It's on SoundCloud. I think just to uh, conclude, I wanted to ask something that's been on my mind, right? In about how uh, individually how we interpret music, right? Um, so, for example, if you're listening to like a guitar solo, right, or like a riff at the beginning of a song or in the middle of a song, um, it's instrumental and it doesn't have like a lyric attached to it. Of course the song has a context, but this thing alone doesn't have like a word attached to it. So how does that like feel for you? Does it evoke like an emotion? Does it relate you back to the lyric? Does it is it more analytical in terms of music, like what is he actually doing there, or is it something else completely? So I'm sure everybody else will have a different answer to it. Every person will have a different answer, but I wanted to ask you and understand what it evokes for you.
yeah, so I mean, it's different things based on what it is. Sometimes it's energy. If you go towards the rock side of things, I think it's a lot of energy and just hype. Then if you go on to like shine on you and those four notes, that's probably very intense. I cannot label that one. That one's I don't know what it does, but it does something.
Yeah, I think that's like what I felt, right? Like initially I used to try to label it, right? I used to try to match it to say, okay, this is happy, this is sad, this is I don't know, dark, but then I realized that it's not necessary, right? You don't need to label it. You just feel something which you feel, and you can just experience that, and it touches you in some way.
Yeah, correct. I mean, emotions are complex, and you just leave it as complex as they can be. You don't need to like bring it down to one specific emotion.
Yeah, I think it's you also. feel that more when you kind of like listen to music more intentionally, right? Like when it's not like background. Of course, there is a utility to it being background. Like it's not to say that it shouldn't be, but certain times when you listen to it intentionally, you kind of discover a lot and you feel all of this a lot more. At least for me, is that how it is
Yes,
for you?
definitely. I make it a point to intentionally listen to music. I mean, nowadays I struggle a little bit because my analytical brain kicks in a lot music analysis, but I'm trying to be more present with like just being in a meditative state, listening to music and let it do what it has to do, and be open to everything. But yeah, I feel if you can put a set of headphones on and just listen to music, it's 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 a nice experience.
Absolutely. And I hope, like, I mean, the idea of this podcast also is to kind of do that. Of course, it's to analyze a little bit and understand the music, but it's also to eventually go and listen to the music, right? Intentionally and see what it does for you. So, so great. I hope all of you got a sense of, what is the process that a musician goes through in terms of writing a song, composing the music, and producing it. Um, and a lot goes into that. So I think I hope you got a feel for that. And Mihir, thank you so much for joining us. I hope we get a chance to do more of these, right? And we get a chance to listen to some songs together and discuss it. But it's been an absolute pleasure, and it's been so great to do this podcast with you. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. And I've been a big fan of your first few episodes. I'll definitely go back and listen to the rest as well.
Thank you, thanks, Mihir. So that's it for this time. So yeah, see you next time.